This is 10 Eyewitness News with Anne Fulwood.
An opportunity to right an historic wrong, Prime Minister Keating explains his Mabo vision on television. Allegations of sexual abuse against Aboriginal children, a Christian brother in hiding. And Faces of War, the mental hospital on the Bosnian front line. Good evening. Prime Minister Paul Keating has delivered his first address to the nation, a 10-minute televised speech on the federal government's Mabo legislation. The opposition say they're disappointed with the explanation, claiming it doesn't reassure ordinary Australians about the implications of the Mabo case.
The importance of the Mabo legislation to Australia prompted the first address to the nation by Mr Keating.
What sort of country would Australia be? How could we claim respect for the law if after the highest court in the land has recognised native title, we denied it?
Mr Keating has 98 pages of Mabo legislation to introduce to the Parliament probably tomorrow, but he ignored the detail in favour of a high moral appeal to Australians.
To deny native title in Australian common law would deny justice, for it would deny Indigenous Australians rights to land enjoyed by other Australians.
But politics wasn't ignored completely. As West Australian Premier Richard Court watched on television in Perth, the Prime Minister warned that Mr Court's attempt to introduce his own Mabo legislation would fail.
Going it alone is not the answer. Ultimately, the Commonwealth law will prevail over the West Australian legislation, and in the meantime, uncertainty will only continue.
But the West Australian Premier is not backing down.
We are not going to be bullied around by a Prime Minister who is now saying that his legislation, which he's warned us is going to be complex, that's got to be the understatement of the year. It's totally unworkable. He's now going to try and ram that on top of the states, and this is one state that's just not going to accept it.
The federal opposition says the Keating speech was a failure.
He should be telling people exactly what he's going to do. He should tell people that they will validate titles so that people know for a fact that their title is safe and secure, to give our businesses certainty about proceeding with investment, which is what we need for jobs.
But on the critical question of will it vote for the legislation, the opposition hasn't yet decided.
Joining us now is Canberra correspondent Paul Smith. And Paul, the Prime Minister set out to clear up some confusion over Mabo tonight. How did he get on?
Well, the opposition would say that the public watching would still be as confused as ever. But I think that's perhaps missing the point. The opposition wants there to be detail about the Mabo legislation. The Prime Minister is perhaps trying to get some higher ground. He realises that people are still confused and concerned about Mabo, and at this stage aren't perhaps ready to absorb too much detail. Rather, they're looking for reasons why they should care about the issue, why they should support what the government is doing. And I think the Prime Minister is appealing to this higher moral ground, to Australians' sense of history, of decency and of fair play, to get them on board with the sort of the legislation that he'll be introducing tomorrow.
I note also that he singled out Western Australia.
He has indeed. There's likely to be a big High Court showdown between the Commonwealth and the West Australian government over who's right and who's wrong on Mabo, and both have got pretty strong and arguable cases. The Prime Minister likes to dismiss the Western Australian case as being unworkable, but there is opinion on Richard Court's side that he will win a High Court argument, or would have a good case in the High Court. So uncertainty will prevail until this issue goes back to the court where it originally arose from.
OK, Paul, now on another issue, I understand there's been a major development tonight involving Australia Post. What's that about? Well,
that's true. Cabinet met this afternoon and decided on a further deregulation of our mail service. It means that private companies will soon be able, from July next year at least, be able to compete with Australia Post on a number of areas. International mail is completely deregulated, and just about everything else, apart from your standard basic letter, gets the competition game going. So small parcels, large envelopes, express post, certified mail, that sort of thing. There'll be companies advertising and knocking on your door to offer a better service, probably not cheaper, but certainly a better service than the postman.
Well, Paul Smith in Canberra, thanks very much for joining us tonight. The federal government has been accused of complacency and policy paralysis in failing to come to grips with Australia's record unemployment. The Council of Social Service says bold and decisive action is required, and it's repeated its call for a levy to finance a jobs development scheme.
The idea of an income super tax to fund jobs creation schemes has been received coolly by the government, but today the Council of Social Service pressed home the attack.
Complacency and policy paralysis are the greatest dangers facing thousands of Australians who are unemployed, particularly the long term, their families and their dependents. If this was the recession we had to have, then this is a recovery those who are unemployed do not deserve.
ACOS argues this is the bold and decisive action needed to reduce unemployment, a levy raising $3 to $4 billion every year for up to 5 years. This on top of the $9 billion already allocated each year to the unemployed by way of direct payments and support schemes. The ACOS blueprint also urges more part-time employment and shorter full-time working hours and demands higher unemployment benefits.
We believe that it's very important that social security payments be boosted so that people do not have to live in poverty whilst they are unemployed.
The ACOS submissions will now go before the Federal Government's Committee on Employment. John Gatfield, 10 News.
The Catholic Church is in turmoil again, with a Christian Brothers principal facing up to 100 charges of sexual abuse. It's alleged the brother assaulted more than 40 children. At the same time, the church faces new damages claims in Victoria following assaults on altar boys by a priest.
It's claimed the attacks took place at Xavier College on Bathurst Island, north of Darwin. They allegedly involve Aboriginal boys and girls aged between 8 and 14 over a number of years. Police won't say how many children are involved, but say the allegations are serious.
Sexual assault, touching, sexual penetration.
Brother John Hallett, the former Christian Brothers school principal, facing the claims, denies them.
It's an allegation at this stage, and that's all it is.
Have you interfered with children whilst being a Christian brother? No?
Interfered with anybody?
You haven't interfered with anybody?
No.
Brother Hallett has been stood aside from normal duties while undergoing counselling and psychotherapy at a Catholic church retreat in Queensland.
We really have a sacred trust for students. I mean, that's what we're about. Now, anything like this, if it's true, goes right against that and obviously causes us great distress.
The children are also being counselled. Northern Territory Police say Brother Hallett won't be charged over what remain allegations until he's been spoken to. At the same time, at least 14 former altar boys are expected to seek damages from the Catholic Church, alleging it was negligent in not preventing a parish priest from assaulting them. The priest, Father Gerald Risdale, served 3 months in jail. He pleaded guilty to 30 charges of assault against 9 boys aged between 12 and 16. Lawyers claim the church knew the priest was an offender, but kept transferring him to other parishes.
If there has been abuse, if there has been a conviction recorded and the legal process is there, clearly a person has a right to seek compensation.
Eddie Meyer, 10 News.
A Melbourne coroner has found a teenage girl was stabbed to death by a woman who was allowed to walk free from a subsequent murder trial. The coroner found Sandra McQuarrie drugged and then repeatedly stabbed 17-year-old Michelle Marshall 4 years ago. Sandra's husband Robert is already serving 20 years in jail after confessing to his part in the murder, but charges against Sandra McQuarrie were dropped when the Director of Public Prosecutions decided it was unlikely she would be found guilty by a jury. The Backpacker Murders Task Force is trying to find a Ruger rifle and other guns missing from a Central Coast property visited by a suspect. Sydney private investigator Tim Bristow nominated the suspect, an aggressive schizophrenic, exclusively in 10 News last week.
Task Force detectives probing the Backpacker murders have stepped up their hunt for the Ruger rifle and others missing from the cottage near Wyong. They went there on Saturday after Tim Bristow gave them spent shells from a .22 caliber Ruger the schizophrenic suspect allegedly fired there. Ballistics experts are still examining the shells against 10 bullets taken from the grave of British backpacker Caroline Clark to see if they're from the same rifle. I understand the firing pin impressions match and the shell casing marks appear to be the same. Bristow declined to be interviewed on television today. However, earlier he'd told newsman Alan Jones that the missing Ruger had been moved from the Central Coast cottage.
On Friday night, someone told me that the guns had been moved into storage by the mother of the schizophrenic.
Detectives from the task force interviewed Tim Bristow today, hoping to contact the suspect's mother so the missing rifles can undergo ballistics checks. Her son was allegedly in hospital late last year when he drew diagrams and told a schizophrenic friend in the next bed how others had been murdered in the forest after the 2 British girls had been found. Tim Bristow claims he made a point of taking 2 local detectives with him to the property near Wyong because he didn't want to be accused of planting the bullet shells he recovered. Now he says he's concerned the pair may be disciplined by police internal affairs, even though they were both off duty at the time. The 2 detectives are yet to be interviewed. However, I'm told there is concern within the service that they should have had permission from the commander of Task Force Air before visiting the property.
Right.
The month-long search of bushland behind Belanglo State Forest by 300 police will wind down from tomorrow. Harry Potter, 10 News.
Still to come, the tomb of Australia's unknown soldier finally sealed. And one state goes it alone in the fight against racism.
Racism sucks, and I think that basically sums it up, you know. It's a pretty hard-hitting message.
Tomorrow night on Hinge. Are consumers being blinded by science?
Being somewhat misled.
Product credibility or simply scientific gimmickry?
Consumers should be reading the packages.
Hinge, weeknight, 7 o'clock on 10.
Since their customers discovered Latino fresh pasta and pasta sauces, some Italian restaurants have been a little quiet. Latino fresh, the pasta and sauces you used to go out for.
This Lexus LS 400 is about to shift from first to second to third and to fourth. We thought we'd take the opportunity to point this out. It would be so difficult for you to tell on your own.
Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday.
I come across tooth decay almost every day. So I recommend my patients use Colgate with Fluorogard, the proven decay fighter. Nothing to drill.
Use the dentist's choice. Colgate with Fluorogard.
Can't understand it. 3,000 kilowatt hours. How can anybody use 3,000 kilowatt hours?
Turn the light off, Graham.
How much is 3,000 kilowatt hours anyway?
Light off.
How can we use so much electricity?
I think I know why.
If you've got a query on your electricity bill, call the SEC anytime, day or night. In a world that depends on electricity, it's nice to know you can depend on the SEC. So call us. We'll SEC you right.
Forget about your payment hat.
You blokes look like you could do with a beer.
Sure could. You better make use of blue.
A blue?
He's got to go back and get his hat.
UN troops in central Bosnia are protecting more than 500 mentally ill patients in 2 hospitals trapped on the front line. The staff have fled, leaving patients to fend for themselves.
The road out is no more than a goat track in places, and a fall of snow on the high ground was the last thing they needed. But by the time we reached Voynitsa, the civilians had all fled. All except these, trapped in 2 hospitals half a mile apart, the front line between Muslims and Croats shifting around them. Those at Bakovici are worst off, 367 long-term psychiatric patients, more than half of them bedridden, have no electricity, no water, and now no staff. What they do have is a handful of Canadian and Danish troops, principally there to provide military protection and turning their hands to psychiatric nursing.
It's hard to come here and not be able to help. We need some treatment of some kind, and we haven't got any.
At nightfall, even the UN withdraws. The patients are left locked up and alone throughout the hours of darkness. It is bitterly cold. At dawn, they go back. The morning bread delivery needs an armoured escort. Its arrival is the start of a remarkable exercise in self-help by those normally considered to be utterly dependent.
The kitchen still works. Zora Kovacevic runs it. She's been a patient for 6 years. She sees that the bedridden get fed. As well as they can, they take care of each other. But there is no medical help. This woman was 70 years old and she died in the night. The Canadians buried her beside the graves of 30 others, filled these last few weeks. It is an image that challenges conventional notions. If there is madness in Vojnica, it is not in Bakovici Hospital. It is on the street. Gangs of young Croatian men are already roaming this part of town. Their final push is about to begin.
The Caribbean island of Puerto Rico has rejected the chance to become the 51st US state. Puerto Ricans went to the polls on statehood for the first time since 1967. 48% voted to remain a United States Commonwealth, turning down the opportunity to become a star on the US flag. The island's pro-statehood governor, Pedro Rossello, conceded defeat within 3 hours of the polls closing. Thousands of people gathered in Berlin for a remembrance ceremony amid noisy protests that the occasion was not appropriate. The demonstrators said the memorial service puts the victims of the Third Reich on the same footing as soldiers who fought for Hitler.
It was to be a solemn dedication of a national memorial for the victims of war and tyranny. But as Chancellor Helmut Kohl and President Richard von Weizsäcker laid wreaths, the demonstrators started to jeer, and then the protests turned violent. The anti-fascists and Jewish protesters say the memorial puts those who fought for Hitler on an equal footing as their victims. In the small town of Halbe, southeast of Berlin, neo-Nazis tried to hold a rally at a World War II cemetery where 20,000 elite German soldiers died in a bloody battle. 200 neo-Nazis were arrested after police found weapons and outlawed propaganda. In London, no such diversions as Britain honoured its war dead at the annual ceremony in Whitehall. More than 10,000 ex-service personnel had gathered to remember the fallen from all wars. The Queen Mother and Princess Anne watched from a balcony as the Queen paid her respects. And when the dignitaries were finished, it was the turn of the former servicemen and women who served their country. In Northern Ireland, the Princess of Wales led a special Remembrance Day ceremony at Enniskillen. In this town 6 years ago, the IRA killed 11 people by setting off a powerful bomb during the memorial service. Later, the Princess joined Catholic and Protestant children in planting a garden of hope and peace. Heather Wellard, 10 News.
Australia's unknown soldier can now rest in peace. Today, his tomb in the Australian War Memorial in Canberra was sealed. Engineers closed the tomb, lowering a slab of red marble weighing 1.6 tonnes over the coffin containing the World War I diggers' remains. There were no spectators present for these special moments of the entombment, in contrast to last Thursday's Remembrance Day ceremony. Since then, more than 41,000 people have passed through the Hall of Memory to pay their respects to the soldier who symbolises all of Australia's war dead. A lack of money is preventing a new anti-racism campaign from gaining national exposure. The $200,000 campaign was launched today by the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council to fight racism against Aborigines.
"You're too pretty to be an Aboriginal," was the racist comment which led to the first paid Aboriginal advertising campaign to attack racism. The campaign is called Changing the Face of Australia.
There's a number of experiences that people have had because of Mabo, and I mean, it's a shame that we've had to spend money to pay to do this, to pay to get a simple message out, but we've had to do it.
Champion athletes Kathy Freeman, Darren Clark and Clayton Carney launched the campaign at the Australian Museum.
The slogan's "Racism sucks," and I think that basically sums it up, you know. It's a pretty hard-hitting message, but so is racism.
The campaign was conceived by the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council in conjunction with a young white advertising agency who directed their message towards the nation's youth.
The older generation generally have entrenched views. It's hard to change their attitudes. We felt that it was more important to use younger people, black and white kids, people, to get a message out. And we're hoping also that they will pass on a message to the older generation.
Kathy Freeman says even champion athletes become the brunt of racist attitudes.
It hurts. It cuts deep. It really hurts.
Appropriately, the campaign is being launched in the year for the world's Indigenous people. The New South Wales Land Council is now seeking corporate sponsorship to commence a television advertising campaign in the new year. Sean Flannery, 10 News.
When we come back, the womb to rent, billboard that's stopping Texan traffic, and Michael Jackson goes underground, but still the questions won't go away.
Michael needs to come to Los Angeles and answer questions under oath.
A victim with amnesia.
I was raped.
A case that can't be tried.
It's obvious they're holding something back.
The only way is to go above the law.
Stone's gonna blow a fuse over this.
Now I'm going to ask you to relax.
And into the subconscious. Law and Order, Tuesday.
Critics are calling Malice the sexiest thriller of the year. From the director of Sea of Love, Alec Baldwin, Nicole Kidman, Malice.
Now you can rent it and try it before you offer to buy it from $1 a day with Radio Rentals Rent Try Buy.
Give us a call.
131-181. Just radio rented.
The magic of three unforgettable groups that helped create the Motown legend. The Four Tops. The Temptations. The Commodores. The Four Tops, The Temptations, and The Commodores. Three essential collections. The Legends of Motown. Out now.
The Black Douglas is now available beautifully gift-boxed with a bonus whiskey tumbler.
Bloody beautiful.
Hurry, limited stocks now available.
The creator of the First Friday returns to bring you the last. And this is your final chance to see it. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday.
An early Christmas present for Australia's low-income earners with the news of an $8 a week wage increase to be paid from the 1st of December. Handing down its decision today, the 7-member Industrial Relations Commission bench said the impact of the pay rise on employment and inflation should be minimal. But employer groups expressed disappointment at the increase, which affects about 2 million lower-paid workers. The Chief Executive of the Australian Chamber of Commerce, Ian Spicer, says the decision will work against the economic recovery. Australia's major banks are in the spotlight this week, with the annual results due from the National Australia, the ANZ and Westpac. Finance editor Helen Nakombi reports.
This time last year, there was fear and trepidation surrounding the release of the bank results. All three who produced their annual report cards in the same week had to deal with the fallout from the economic downturn. With businesses going bust and property values plunging, there were hundreds of millions of dollars in bad debts to write off and re-evaluations of property loan portfolios. Westpac, which had become involved in commercial property development, had a shocking $1.6 billion loss. This year, there's still some wariness about the sort of figure likely to emerge from the Martin Place headquarters after a recent review of problem properties. Analysts are uncertain about the extent of the extra write-downs Westpac will make. Managing Director Bob Joss will reveal all on Thursday, the same day the National Australia reports. That will be a completely different story. The NAB is one of the best managed banks in the world. It rates in the top 10. It's really a matter of how good a result can the National Australia turn in. The tip is for a record $1 billion profit. First off the blocks is the ANZ. Its results are out tomorrow. The share market was strong this morning. With afternoon profit taking, the index finished 9 points higher. North Broken Hill rose 20 cents, while Fairfax, Country Road and Westpac were all down. That's the latest in business news.
And on the currency markets, the Australian dollar still struggling, a cent down on Friday as Japanese sold out in the wake of the Tokyo stock market decline. Tonight, the Aussie dollar's at 65.4 US, 43.86p and 69.23 yen. Gold in London is at $373.70 an ounce. The FT100's up 3 points. The Hang Seng closed the day up 32. The Nikkei fell 418. It's not a room for rent, but a womb for rent. A billboard in Texas has drivers doing a double take as an unidentified woman is advertising to become a surrogate mother for prospective parents. She is seeking more than the usual $15,000 fee for her surrogacy because of her good education and health. Pop star Michael Jackson's in hiding after his latest setback, being dumped by Pepsi. Speculations mounting that he's in London, being treated for an addiction to painkillers.
Officials at the Drug Treatment Centre on a quiet side street in London will neither confirm nor deny that Michael Jackson has checked in. Britain's national newspapers have no doubts. They say Jackson has checked into the clinic because this is where his friend Elton John overcame his addictions. Jackson stunned his fans when he abruptly cancelled his world tour. And in a recorded message, he said addiction to painkillers was ruining his health.
I became increasingly more dependent on the painkillers to get me through the days of my tour.
The dangerous tour turned out to be trouble for Jackson. Just as the world tour was launched, a 13-year-old Los Angeles boy accused Jackson of molesting him. Anguish over the allegation is cited as one of the reasons for the singer's addiction. Sunday night, Pepsi Cola announced it was cutting all ties with the singer when he abandoned the tour. And Sony Corporation, which holds the multi-million-dollar record contract with Jackson, is expected to make an announcement later today.
Coming up next, the latest weather details and Tim Webster to start the week with Sports Tonight.
In Sports Tonight, straight after the news, weightlifting, NFL, soccer and Greg Norman. From shark to fish finger, now a great white again, his story.
The Black Douglas is now available beautifully gift boxed with a bonus whiskey tumbler.
Bloody beautiful.
Hurry, limited stocks now available.
One singular sensation, every little step he takes. One what I did for.
A chorus line, the greatest musical ever. Don't miss it.
How many times have you wondered who's going to do something?
Or who'll check out the alarm?
How many times have you said this won't happen to me?
Call now for an ADT SafeWatch alarm system.
Hi, I'm Steve Alderman from ADT. And for only $195, that's right, $195, you can have a SafeWatch alarm system in your home. We'll install door contacts on both front and back doors and an internal movement detector, interior siren and exterior alarm, plus keypad. And for only $1 a day, you'll be linked by phone line to ADT's Alarm Response Centre. Your home will be monitored day and night. If your alarm is activated, ADT will immediately call the police or a mobile patrol. Plus, as a TV special, if you call now, we'll install this smoke detector absolutely free. Get a SafeWatch alarm for only $195 plus monitoring. And if you call now, this smoke detector free. Help protect